Hi there, folks. It's Lynn Ames. As I promised on Facebook, this is one of my virtual appearances. Every now and again, I ask my Facebook friends what they would like to know if they were sitting with me in person, having a face-to-face, if I was making an appearance in their hometown, which I would love to do in every town across the world, but unfortunately, that's not practical. So I do things like this, where I sit down with you and I let you ask questions in a thread, a comment thread, and then I give you responses this way so that it's sort of live, quasi-live, kind of live. Anyway, today's questions are really fabulous questions. By the way, it's June 6th, 2016. Proof of life, I guess. In any event, so I'm going to answer these questions. They are really, really thoughtful and thought-provoking questions. So I hope you don't mind if I take my time answering them. Some of these questions require a little bit of extra information, extra thought, and I really want to make sure that I give them their due. I'm not going to mention who asked the question because this is going to be a public video, and some of these people may not want their names out in the wide open space. So let's get started, why don't we? Okay, so I can read the questions. I have glasses. The first question is, and this is from someone who has clearly a very good memory. Lynn, you asked everyone online to send in suggested titles for a poem you had just written. Well, you picked my suggested title, Until We Meet Again. Can you tell me where I can find this piece? That's, like I said, someone with a really good memory, because that was 3 years ago. Wow, you people really hold on to stuff, which is fabulous. It's fabulous. The poem in question I had written that I didn't have a title for, and I asked others to title for me, goes like this. Why don't I just read you the poem? And I will tell you that it is in this book, which is Delectable Daisies. Sorry, you can't hardly see that, can you? Delectable Daisies. It's part of the Sappho's Corner series. I have, I think, 10 poems in this particular volume. I've got 10 in another volume called Wet Violets, and I've got another 5 in a volume called Red Roses, all part of the same series. In any event, this particular poem, Until We Meet Again, and by the way, this is a fabulous, fabulous title for this poem. Here's the poem, and I'm going to read it. I have it on Evernote for those of you who are app freaks. Evernote is a wonderful app that goes across all platforms, so whatever I have on my phone, I have on my iPad, I have on my computer, I have on my iMac. I don't have an iMac, wishful thinking. I have a MacBook Pro laptop that I write on, and so I have it across all platforms, available to me all the time. So if you're an app freak, this is the app for you, Evernote. It's free, remember that. This is Until We Meet Again. I miss your brilliant smile, your laugh, your soft, tender kiss lingering on my lips as we breathe, hearts open and beating as one, every whisper, every shared touch, an eternity. My heart melts as our souls lift together as one on the wings of angels. I remember, and I believe. Copyright Lynn Ames, 2013. That is Until We Meet Again. So thanks for the question. Now you know where you can find it. That particular volume is available on Amazon. But because you remembered that you had titled it, and from 3 years ago, which absolutely fascinates me, if you actually PM me, private message me your address details, I'm going to send you a free copy, a free autographed copy of that book, because I think I have a few lying around. I sure hope so, because I just promised it to you. So there you go. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you for remembering that I am not just a novelist, but a poet as well. And thank you for remembering that poem. It still holds great meaning for me, and it is still true. The next question, and I love this as well. The political intrigue and duplicitous behavior in Final Cut, which is my latest novel, was very interesting to me. Knowing your background in New York State government, I was curious if you faced this type of behavior firsthand. That's a really deep and interesting question. For those of you who are not as familiar with my background, I served as press secretary to the New York State Senate Minority Leader. I was also a spokesperson for the New York State prison system, which is the third largest prison system in the nation. And I worked in a variety of other capacities in New York State government and in politics in New York. So, in answer to your question, I will say this, and I don't want to give too much away because I'm not going to spoil Final Cut for anyone. Um, uh, but the main premise, the issue is government bullying and the government's desire to keep secrets and to lean on others to keep secrets for them. This particular book arose out of an article, out of a real life situation. There's a New York Times reporter, he was a New York Times reporter, named James Risen. And he was a national reporter, and he had a line on a really important story. And he was heavily leaned on by Condoleezza Rice and the Bush administration, George W. Bush administration, not to publish what he knew. They leaned on the New York Times not to publish this story. They argued that it was a matter of national security and that, it would give away too much. Well, Risen argued to write the story, and his bosses overruled him, and he did not write the story in the end. But what he did do was write a book after the fact. And as a result of his having written that book, the federal government, the Bush administration, made his life a living hell. They charged him with all manner of crimes, saying that he had violated national security and so on and so forth. They dragged him through the mud and through a court process that took nearly more than half a dozen years and essentially ruined this man's career. And in the end, nothing came of it. But, as I said, they ruined this man's career. And it brings to mind the question of how much is too much, how far is too far, and what do the people have a right to know? In answer to your specific question about whether or not I know a thing or two about this on a personal level, I will say this. I've been on both sides of the microphone. As you know, I started my career as an award-winning broadcast journalist. And in that time, I faced a couple of times when I was asked nicely to hold a story for a little while. And the instances in which I was asked to hold back were not instances like that where they were politically charged things. There was an incident in the early 1980s when I was a radio reporter. I arrived on the scene, a horrific scene of what became, in essence, a murder-suicide in progress. And I got there before the police did, and I could see what was happening because it was happening in an open upstairs window. And, those are the kinds of things, let me tell you folks, that you never, ever forget seeing. You can't unsee that once you see it. I got there first, and in, some way, it hadn't happened yet, and it was getting ugly very fast. And I, at the behest of police, and they wouldn't even have had to ask me to do it, I held back a lot of the details of what had happened because it really just didn't need to be told that way, and it wasn't appropriate. And the woman involved, the murder victims involved, her family was, hadn't been there, and I really wanted to be sensitive, so I held that back. So that was one instance in which I held back. Here is a semi-political instance in which I did actually hold back for several hours. I don't know how many of you remember that there was the invasion of the Falkland Islands in the Reagan administration in the 1980s, in the early 1980s. And hostages were taken, and among the hostages taken were the daughter of, she wasn't actually taken hostage, the daughter of someone local to where I was a reporter. I was a reporter in Albany, New York. And I got a frantic phone call from a parent saying they couldn't find her daughter, who was in medical school in the Falkland Islands at the time, and could I somehow get her help. She was trying every avenue and could not get a line on her daughter. And because I had the power of the microphone behind me and the power of the press behind me, I was able to pull some strings. I was able to make some phone calls and to beat on some doors and actually live on the air connect this woman with her daughter in the Falkland Islands in the middle of the attack. Which was fabulous, but there were things that I did not say about what was going on because it was a military exercise, and because I had been working with the State Department, the U.S. State Department, to try to get a line on this kid, and in the process, I found out some things that were sensitive and ongoing, and I did hold those back. Again, they didn't need to ask me to hold that back. That was truly a matter of safety for people's lives, for our soldiers' lives, and I was never going to take a chance on something like that. So Those were just a couple of instances where I did hold something back. There were plenty of other cases where I knew things that I never said when I was on the other side of the microphone, when I was working in politics. There were plenty of times that I knew things that I never said. If a reporter had asked me, would I have told them the truth? I always told the truth. As a spokesperson, as what they call a flack, as a PR person, the only stock in trade you really have is your credibility. Never ever lie. I will tell you that the senator that I worked for was under indictment at the time I worked for him. He actually was indicted shortly before he hired me, and there's a really great story behind that, but I'm not going to tell it to you right here, right now, this way. But I will say this. Anytime the senators all got together and caucused, which they did often, and anytime something sensitive was about to come up, I would hold my hand up and I would say, stop talking, stop talking. I'm going to leave the room, and you can say whatever it is you need to say. And when you are done, come get me. Because I always wanted to be able to go out in front of the media and say with absolute conviction and truth, I can't answer that question because I don't know the answer. If I didn't hear it, I didn't know it. And that was the policy. And I can tell you that that is true in the White House. It's true in every other sensitive position like that. You know, leave the room. Don't let them talk about it while you're there, because then if someone asks you the question, either you have to answer the question honestly or you have to lie. And I was never going to lie. And I really didn't want to know the answer to a lot of those questions. And so I would leave the room. But I will tell you that that my senator was exonerated in the end, and he was, it never came to trial in the end. And for that, I'm very grateful. I had already left by the time the trial came about. And I will tell you this, an interesting sidelight. The governor asked me at one point why it was I took that job. He couldn't understand why I would put myself in that position. The governor was a friend of mine, Governor Mario Cuomo, the original Governor Cuomo. He couldn't understand why I took the job. He was very upset with me for taking it. And I said, for me, it's a win-win. If I can get him off, then I'm a PR genius, and I can write my own ticket and go anywhere I want. And if I can't get him off, I just came in to clean up the mess. It was already created long before I got here. And it's no lose for me because it wasn't my mess. I just came in and helped him through the crisis. I don't believe the governor was truly satisfied with that remark. I think he was forever upset with me about it, truthfully. But in the end, the senator was exonerated. I left before that happened to become spokesperson for the state prison system. But in any event, all is well that ends well. So there you go, a little bit of extra information, more than what you asked for. But does what I talked about in Final Cut happen? It happens all the time. I promise you that what I wrote is very real. And this is sometimes why I write things like this. I write things like this to make you think, to make you consider the possibilities, to make you understand how things really work. Sometimes it's really important to know that, even if you think you might not want to know. I hope that answers your question. Next question. Since the Golden Crown Literary Society Conference is a month from now in Washington, D.C., July 6th to July 10th, this is a great confab. It's my favorite event of the year. It combines readers and all of your favorite authors and publishers, and it's just a fabulous 5 days of wonderful camaraderie and family and learning, panels and speakers and master classes and so on and so forth. In fact, I'm teaching a master class in social media. Comes as no surprise to some of you, probably. I'm sitting on several panels and doing a reading and doing all kinds of fun things. And I'll be with all of you, which makes me very, very happy, all those of you who can attend. So I've already answered part of the question, which is, what do you look forward to when attending? I look forward to seeing everybody. People I've already met, old friends, new friends, people I haven't met yet. I look forward to exchanging ideas and information and the feeling that I get of being in a room with so many really wonderful, intelligent people who care about literature and who care about what we do for a living and who appreciate what we do for a living. There's no feeling quite like that. And to see all of my author friends, whom I get to see very rarely, we talk all the time, but we only get to see each other a few times a year for the most part because we're scattered all over the world. It's really a special occasion, and I hope as many of you as possible will be attending. There's still time, I think. You could still sign up, and if not this year, then next year in Chicago. Be there. Aloha. And this person asks me, if so, are you a fan of fudge? If so, what's your favorite flavor? Why would one ask that question? All right, well, let me say this. I very rarely eat fudge, but I love fudge. Fudge is, like a food group, right? Fudge is a food group, I think. Do I know what my favorite flavor of fudge is? I haven't sampled enough fudge to know. So I think that this requires some research. I think it requires research and probably a good cohort of samples to figure out what I really, truly like. I will give you a hint along the way. Number one, I'm a milk chocolate kind of girl, not a dark chocolate kind of girl, but I do like chocolate fudge. Number two, I have lately acquired a taste for sea salt caramel frozen yogurt and gelato. So I don't know, do they make sea salt caramel fudge? They must. It comes in everything, right? So I might be a fan of that. I don't like anything with nuts in it. Here's another hint for you. I don't like anything that has nuts in it. I'm a purist. So does that help you? I hope that helps you. Why are you asking me this question? Why on earth are you asking me this question? Okay, next question. You mentioned Parker and Dixie, my two golden retrievers, writing again. Do you have a release date yet? Hold on. Let me ask. Parker, do we have a release date on that yet? What do you say, buddy? Do we have a date? He's looking at me like, Mom, if you would get off my computer and let me write, we might have a release date. Here's what's happening. The kids have commandeered the computer again, and they are writing so far very hilarious, at least, it looks like that from the way they're snickering. They have written a very hilarious series of short stories, or they are writing a very hilarious series of short stories based on the classics. So for those of you who remember back at Christmas time, they told a little story called A Christmas Tale, Tail, that is on Amazon. It's available right now for $2.99 as an electronic download. And if you don't laugh at that story, I will personally give you your money back. In any event, right now they are working on a story called A Tale of Two Cities, Tail, and I promise you, Dickens has nothing on my kids, and the story will look nothing like a dystopian England in revolutionary times. I promise you it doesn't. It's a tale of two cities, as told from Dixie and Parker's perspective. There will be a series of these. I will release them periodically, and in the end, I will put them all together in a single author anthology, or an author anthology that comes from my kids and me. I can't tell you exactly when they will be out. The first one, this one, A Tale of Two Cities, I will probably release. Today is the 6th of June, and my kids tell me that they have not written all that much on it yet, but they will be writing today. Yes, they will be writing today. So I would suspect that this will come out sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, this first story, and then you can expect others to come out periodically as well. So that was part of your question. That was part one. The next part of the question was about your romantic comedy. Did the muse already hit you? And she puts 6 question marks, which makes me think she would really like it if the muse had hit me. Well, here's the thing about this romantic comedy. I wasn't planning to write a romantic comedy. I didn't know what I was going to write next. I often don't at this point, so soon after having written something else. But here's what happened. I was sitting in Logan Airport in Boston last Sunday night, a week ago Sunday night, on my way back from Boston and Maine, and I had a few hours to spare, and I was talking to my little sister of choice, Anne McMahon, famous author. You have to say it all like that, Anne McMahon, famous author. And I was, we were just chatting about this, that, and the other thing, doing what we normally do. And she said, what are you writing? What are you writing next? Have you given any thought to what you're writing next? And I said, nothing is what I said, just like that. In case you were wondering, I wasn't caught there. I just had nothing to say because I didn't know what I was doing. So she says, I know what you have to write. I know what you have to write. You must do this, Skippy. It is an imperative. You must write this right now. And I remembered after she started badgering me about writing a romantic comedy that this is about the 6th or 7th time that she has badgered me about writing a romantic comedy, because for reasons unknown to me, she thinks that I will be particularly good at writing romantic comedy. I have written traditional contemporary romance. I have written historical romance. I have written action adventure romance. I have written thrillers, but never a romantic comedy. But for some reason, she seems to think that I've got this thing. So we started talking about the possibilities, and she had a very definitive idea of what she thought I should write as a romantic comedy. Now, her idea, my idea, I wasn't all that. I was comfortable with parts of what she had in mind. Parts of it didn't quite work for me. So we went back and forth for about an hour about this. And I went away saying, let me think about it. Let me think about it and work on it. I'm really not used to collaborating with people on my plots. I usually, figure it out myself. And so I thought about it and I thought about it. And a couple days later, I thought I had what I wanted to do fully, envisioned in my mind, and I jotted it down in Evernote, like I told you, where I keep everything that I need to remember, because sometimes I forget. And I thought, well, I'll send it to Thumper Ann McMahon and see what she says. Big mistake, big mistake. So I sent it to her, and she comes back to me, and she says, no. She said, part of this is absolutely perfect. It's absolutely perfect. But this second part of this, you're not getting off that easy. That's too easy. I want you to really stretch yourself here. You've got this. You've got this. Get outside your comfort zone and do something different than anyone else is doing. Do something that has never been done before. Do something that is worthy of you. And I had thought the first plot was worthy of me, but okay, fine. So anyway, we talked about it more. In fact, that was in an email. And she said at the end of the email, as she sometimes does when she is telling me she doesn't want me to have a knee-jerk reaction, she said to me, I await your thoughtful response, which is to say, don't give me knee-jerk here, Skippy. Don't give me knee-jerk. So I read her email at 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. And in order not to give her my knee-jerk reaction, which was, I'm sorry, this is my book, not yours, I didn't say anything. And I walked away, and I went about my business, my morning routine, and I worked out, and I took care of the dogs, and I did meditated. I did all the things I normally do. And I came back, and my phone, when I do that, is not with me. It's usually sitting on my night table upstairs. I came back, I came upstairs, I went through like I usually do and quickly checked to see what my emails were. And sure enough, there's another email from her. It says, what are you doing? And why have you not called to yell at me yet? And I laughed about that because, she expected me to give it to her with both barrels for overstepping and stepping into my plot, essentially. And I called her back later that afternoon, and I said, I'm not yelling at you. This is my quiet voice. So let's just talk through it and see what it is you really have in mind, and let's talk about it, because I'm sure we can come to a place where we both agree on what my plot should be. So we talked about it for another 45 minutes or so. And like I said, this is not usually, I don't usually do plot by committee, but this is sort of an unusual thing. And, this is a special request from her for me to write a romantic comedy. You all seem to like the idea of me writing romantic comedy. So there you go. So anyway, so I thought about it late that night, and I jotted down again in Evernote my notes, having come up with a different way to do it that sort of embodied the basic premises and the ideas that we had talked about, and that she had sort of been guiding me toward, rather than the direction that I was heading with the second part of the plot. And so I jotted down some really quick dialogue to sort of give me a starting point to know where I was going with all this when I get to sit down and write this. And so I sent it off to her late that night. And, we're at like opposite ends of the spectrum. She goes to bed very early on the East Coast and wakes up very early on the East Coast. And I wake up early on my coast, I'm on Pacific time, but, she's already been up for probably 5 hours. So I knew that I would get an answer before I ever woke up in the morning. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you what she said. I don't know. Can you even see that? There's so much glare. I don't know if you can see what she said, but I'll read it to you minus the expletive in the middle. This is all in caps. She said, "OMG, this is brilliant. Do not pass go. Do not pay the Shadchan 200 shekels. Perfect, sublime, hilarious, and no," whatever it was I was going to write in the second part of the thing. She said, "Brava, Skippy, you did it." So the long answer to your question is we have now apparently come to some agreement on the plot. And I have been doing a lot of percolating and thinking about how to get this done. I've, been going back and forth about various plot devices and things. There will be a lot of hilarity in this book. I promise you there will be. I'm about to sit down and write the synopsis for the book, the back cover blurb, because that will give me a starting point. And then I need a title. Here I am again needing a title. So maybe I'll ask all of you to help me title this one after I write the back cover blurb. We'll see. In any event, the answer is, has the muse hit me yet? I am certainly thinking very hard about this, and I'm going back and forth between projects and things, and I've got some traveling to do coming up. But yeah, this is really on the blackboard, and it's really happening, and I believe that I will have it done before the end of the year if all goes well. So there you go. Long answers today, guys. I'm giving you long answers. I really hope you don't mind too much. Do you remember your favorite lesbian author from when you were a teenager? Well, honey, when I was a teenager, I wasn't reading lesbian fiction because I didn't really know what was going on, truthfully. I didn't start reading lesbian fiction until I was in my 20s. But I will tell you that the very first lesbian book that I discovered in my early 20s, late teens, actually, early 20s, was a book by Catherine V. Forrest called Amateur City. It's part of her Kate Delafield series. It was the first lesbian book I ever read, and I just was in love with Kate Delafield. And so I subsequently read everything I could get my hands on, every part of the series, and then I started reading other similar series like it. And it just sort of snowballed from that point. Actually, then I was reading more mysteries than I was reading romance. There wasn't a whole lot of romance out there at the time. I was reading some romance, but it wasn't like the romance today. Times were different, the priorities were different, the stories were different. But in any event, I remember first discovering those books, and I first discovered those books at a bookstore called Women Crafts in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And if you had told me that I would grow up and read and sign books there every year, you could have blown me over with a feather. But Women Crafts in Provincetown holds a very special place for me because it was the first place I saw myself reflected back at me in the pages of books. So God bless independent bookstores is what I have to say about that. Okay, this question. You've recently written Bright Lights of Summer and Eyes on the Stars, both historical fiction, which would have entailed research, even though both are fictional works. Yes, even fictional work, especially fictional work, requires a great deal of research. Where do you start with your research? Hang on. Where do you start with your researching? Come on, work with me here, please. Thank you. Where do you start with your researching, and where do you turn when you hit a dead end? Okay, I start researching with newspaper articles and on the internet and Google and so on and so forth. And then, based on the basic research that I do at first blush, I figure out what experts I need to talk to. And then I turn to books, and then I turn to live experts. I go out of my way to collect people who are experts in their fields. And I interview them, and that's a great part of my research. And by the way, I'm actually sitting on a panel talking about historical fiction research at GCLS a few weeks hence from now, and I would love it if you would all come. This person is going to be there, so I highly suggest that you show up at that panel if you want more answers. So I start with Google, I start broad and I narrow down based on what my broad research shows. I get a better handle on exactly what the specifics are that I need to know. I'm not someone who over researches, as in I like find out everything on the planet about something and then try to stuff that all into a narrative, because I think it gets preachy and it gets boring. So I make sure that I know what I need to know, what is germane to the plot, what's germane to the story, what is helpful, and that's what I focus on when I am doing research. There was a second part to this question. Someone sort of piggybacked on that first question and said, do you do all of your research before you start to write or when you hit the thing that needs researching in the story? Okay, and there's another part to the first question also I see, which is where do you turn when you hit a dead end? I really hope I never hit a dead end. In Bright Lights of Summer, I hit a dead end because there was a piece of information that wasn't anywhere, that I couldn't find anywhere. And the only person who had the answer was Dot Wilkinson, who was, of course, the impetus for the book, Bright Lights of Summer. And so I went to Dot and I said, I've hit a dead end. And we spent 3 or 4 days combing through her house, which is like a museum, looking for evidence of what I needed to know. And eventually, after 4 or 5 days of this, we actually came across a teeny little scrap of paper that was in her handwriting, written in the 1950s, that had the answer that I needed. And it was the only place I found the answer. If I truly hit a dead end and there is no answer and I can't seem to find a way around it, then I've got to write something else. I have to find a way around it. Because everything in my books is historically accurate to the best of my ability. I am a stickler for detail and a stickler for correct research and verifiability in my stories. So there you go. The next question, see, I already lost what the under question was. Do I do all my research before I start, or do I do it as I go along? I do all my research ahead of time because I'm the kind of writer I really, really hate when I get taken out of a story because I got to go research something. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't times where I, come upon roadblocks at something I didn't anticipate and I need to know it in the middle of a story and then I've got to go find it. Sure, that happens. But I try to have all my ducks in a row before I ever sit down to write. I find that far more useful and it informs the story because I don't outline. I'm not an outliner. I'm a pantser, which means I fly by the seat of my pants. I need to have everything at my fingertips as I'm writing because my stories occur to me organically. In other words, I'm in the story. I'm writing the story as it's happening, like it's happening in real time. And in order to do that, I have to know what the research is ahead of time. So I do all my research ahead of time to the best of my ability. And, I fill in as I need to along the way, but I really hope that that's pretty infrequent. And usually it really is. Okay, this person wants to know what is the best piece of advice Dot ever gave me? Best piece of advice Dot ever gave me. Dot would tell you I never listened to her advice because she's full of advice and she's happy to give it to me. And she is fond of saying to me, I don't know why I talk to you, you never listen to me, which is, of course, not the least bit true, but I let her think that. The best piece of advice Dot ever gave to me. Probably live your life to the fullest. Don't leave anything behind. Don't leave anything on the table. No regrets. Live the life you want to live. Do everything that you want to do. And that way, when you get to be my age, she's 94, almost 95, you'll know that you've done it all. And you'll be ready to go when you're ready to go because there's nothing that you haven't done or said. And so I try very hard not to leave anything undone or unsaid in my life. And may I always do that. She's a true treasure, that woman. She is a true treasure. We all have bucket lists. What's on your bucket list? You know what? That's interesting. I don't have a bucket list. Are there things that I really would love to do in my lifetime? Yes. Have I ever stopped and thought about it like as a bucket list, written it down saying, okay, these are the things I'm going to check off before I die? Haven't done that. I haven't done that. Are there a lot of things that I would really love to do? Yeah, absolutely. What's on my bucket list? A lot of travel. I have a lot of travel and a lot of adventure on my bucket list. There are things that I want to do, people I want to meet. But most of all, my biggest bucket list item is just to leave this earth knowing that I made a difference, knowing that um, I did what I came here to do, that I lived the life I meant to live, that I left here with having left the people I've touched better than they were before they met me, better than they were before they read my work, better than they were before I somehow touched their life indirectly or directly. That's my biggest bucket list item, is to know that I've not left anything behind, that I've done what I came to do. And, I intend to have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and do a lot of things, do a lot of living before I get to that point. So, it's not much of a bucket list, but it's all of a bucket list all at the same time. Live life, laugh hard, enjoy, and do good things. That's my bucket list, truly. You once alluded to your political insight, having worked in that field. I told you all that I came from the world of politics and the media and government. As a political junkie, I'm interested in your take on this election season. Huh. I would definitely ask you this question if we were face to face, although I am less interested in your personal vote or your personal preferences, good, because I wouldn't tell you, and more interested in what you think about the machinations of this present process. Wow. You have about 5 years for me to answer this question, because that's about how long it would take me to answer. Here's the thing. This is an election season, as you all know, unlike any other. The things that are happening now are unprecedented. This campaign season, unprecedented. And it has its roots very deep from a long time ago. All history is cyclical, and all history builds on itself, which is to say, what we are seeing now in this election, particularly on the Republican side of this election, let's just put it that way, the seeds for this were sown in the 60s. You could go back to Barry Goldwater and start, with this process and move forward. And as you move forward, I'm not going to take you through a full history lesson. You can stop yawning now. I promise you I won't. But let me just say this. I will take you back as far as 8 years ago or thereabouts. And I will say, with the advent of what we call the radical right and then the Tea Party, here's what happened. And here is how we get to where we are now with a nominee like Donald Trump. Mainstream Republicans in power saw the opportunity with the Supreme Court decision about Citizens United and unlimited political contributions from unlimited sources that can remain anonymous, which is just mind-boggling to me, and we have to fix this. That is the only editorial thing I will tell you, is we must fix this if we're going to fix the process. In any event, these mainstream Republicans smugly thought that they could harness the energy and the power that was the Tea Party, the radical right, and use those votes that nucleus attracted to their advantage in order to beat the Democrats. Well, that's all well and good, but that was smug, as I said, and it was arrogant. And by the way, it was a really bad miscalculation, because what happened? The members of the Tea Party, the members of the radical right, the more extreme far right part of the political spectrum, has their very own ideas about how things should work and how things are broken in our system. And they are not going to be swayed by anybody to change their minds or to vote a certain way or to be controlled. They're not going to be controlled or managed by politicians, by career politicians. And so here we are with getting in bed essentially with the devil. And here's what's happened. You have created an environment where a Donald Trump can actually thrive. And I would never have thought in my lifetime I would say something like that in a political arena, but there you go. You've created this environment, this sort of petri dish where this bacteria is growing. Now, what will happen as we go forward here? The general election is a far different thing from the primaries, and we haven't yet gotten to the conventions. And the conventions, I think, will prove to be very, very interesting and very illustrative for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being mainstream Republicans are still trying to figure out how to harness Donald Trump and how to make him an instrument of their party. And let me just say this. Ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's not that kind of guy. The guy's a megalomaniac. He's never going to hew to the Republican line. That's not who this man is. This is not how he does business. And to him, this is a business. This is a business. So I believe, if you're asking me what I think will happen here, this is how we got to where we are right now. And let me just say, before you all despair, and I know many of you are, let's get out of that place of fear, because staying in a place of fear where you're afraid of what will happen in this election, doesn't help us. It doesn't help anybody. Put all your energy into asking the universe to bring into positions of power and influence those who are acting in integrity and have all of our highest goods in mind. That's what I do every morning. I pray for that. I got to tell you, I do. And I really hope that if all of us do that, we'll get someplace we need to be here. But sometimes you have to break something all the way down in order to build it back up. And I think that we are at this point in our political system, in our political life, where this is what we are doing. We have torn the process completely apart in order to build it back into something more like what it needs to be. So not all bad, what is happening, not all bad, what is happening. But there's a lot of time left between now and November. There are a lot of things that can happen between now and November. And I would say to you that a man of Donald Trump's stature, about whom so much has been written and spoken, and about whom so many know an awful lot, there's a lot more that's going to come out before we get to the end of this. I can promise you, having been on the inside of political systems like this, there are focus groups going on all over the country and all over the world trying to figure out what the buzzwords are that will either help a candidate or hurt a candidate, that will help Hillary, that will help Bernie, that will help Donald, the Donald. There are focus groups going on everywhere. There are impact teams on the ground vetting these candidates, trying to find anything, any smoking guns, anything that can be used for them or against them. This is going on right now, and it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me. In fact, it would surprise me if this wasn't true, that there are behind the scenes mainstream, big name Republicans and Democrats, mainstream, big time Republicans and Democrats working together to try to figure out how to stop the juggernaut. I know that's happening. I can tell you that. And I can also tell you that, like I said, the general election will be a far different game than the primaries. So let's wait and see how this unfolds. I'll be very interested to see how this unfolds. I am not despairing. You know, every day people come to me and they say, oh, they're wringing their hands and saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I keep saying, stay calm, keep calm, and trust in the process here. Trust in the process. Trust that something is going to happen here that is going to shake this thing out. Okay? That's the best I'm going to tell you right now. I could literally spend days talking about this topic and would love to talk more about it, but you know what? We'll see. Talk to me in November, right? Or talk to me in July, August, September, and we'll talk more about it. I would love to do that. This person says, has writing always been as natural as breathing for you? Yes. I've been writing since I was 8 years old. I told stories when I was 8 years old. I wrote my first novel at 10. Writing is like breathing for me. It was a very healing thing for me as a child, a very natural thing for me to do, to express myself in writing. And so it has always come easily for me, and for that I am obviously eternally grateful, and eternally grateful for all of you who read what I have to say and keep asking me for more. That's a remarkable thing, and I am truly, truly blessed. So here we go. Is Final Cut the last we really hear of Kate and Jay? Never say never, kids. I don't know. I don't know if it's the last we've heard of Kate and Jay. I can't tell you that. Maybe not. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe. You want me to put if I gave percentages, I would say 75% that we have not heard the last of Kate and Jay. How's that? 75% that we have not heard the last of Kate and Jay. Maybe 80%. Okay? I hope that makes you happy. You all seem to love Final Cut, which I'm so grateful for, and you all seem to want more of these characters, which is absolutely great. Do you remember your very first trip to a public library? How old were you then? Yes, I do. I do. It was the Greenwich Public Library, Greenwich, Connecticut, which is right across the border from where I grew up. And this is a huge public library. And I remember I was about 8 years old, and I walked in, and I just looked up at all the stacks, and back then we had, of course, the Dewey Decimal System and the card system, and everything was filed, and I mean, I just wandered among the stacks of books, that musty smell that's in an old library, and that is a very old library, and the stacks that reached 6 stories high, and I was just wowed and overwhelmed, and I could have spent all day there, and in fact I did spend all day there, and many days in subsequent years there until I graduated high school. That was my go-to library, and I spent quite a bit of time there. I love libraries, and I love librarians. Yay for librarians who know everything about everything. They just do. Okay. If you threw the first pitch out for a team, oh God, would I love to do that. Who would you want it to be? The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Diamondbacks? Who said the Red Sox? Your Red Sox? What are you, nuts? Oh, really? It would be the Yankees, or maybe the Mets, but the Yankees. It would be the Yankees. I would love to throw out the first pitch for the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. I wish it was historic Yankee Stadium, the original Yankee Stadium, but Yankee Stadium now will do. I would absolutely love to throw out the first pitch. Are you offering? Somebody get me there. Sign me up. I'm ready. Let's do this. Okay. What's the ideal number of writing/editing projects for you to have in progress on a given day? All of them being under separate titles. Let me say this. I wear many hats. I have essentially three companies that I run all at one time. And I'm an industry all to myself. But in terms of writing projects, I really prefer to work only on one writing project at a time. I'm a one at a time kind of thing. I like to do it and get it done and then move on to the next. This has been a very unusual time for me where I've got several things going on at the same time. I wrote Final Cut while the kids were writing A Christmas Tale. The kids are writing A Tale of Two Cities while I'm about to sit down and start writing this new romantic comedy. I'm creating the masterclass presentation slides right now for my masterclass at Golden Crown Literary Society conference in a few weeks. My slides are due, I don't know, 9 days from now, and I haven't made the slides yet. I have sort of outlined what I want to do, but so I have to do all of that, and plus, I run a publishing company. I give PR advice to people right now. I'm working with some very large celebrities on negotiating their memoirs for them. So because they don't really know how the process works, and so I'm helping them through that. Some very big names that you would certainly know. I'm working on any number of things at one time, but in terms of writing projects and editing, really only pretty much one at a time. Anyway, so I'm a busy girl is what I have to say about that. Parker question. This is a late question, but you know what? I'm still here, so let's just do this. Parker question. How does he like these early morning walks? I've missed something. He may be losing his muscle bone strength. Thanks. Love that boy too. Okay. So here we go. Parker lately hasn't really much wanted to go for walks at all, but he needs to go. He's got to go. This is how we keep him moving and grooving. After the 2 strokes that he suffered in February, he has come so far back. He's almost all the way back, but he doesn't have a lot of strength in his legs. And so occasionally he sways. I watch him sway, and it makes me nervous. Occasionally he loses his balance and he falls, and, help me, I've fallen and I can't get up. And it takes him a little while to scramble to get up. Sometimes it takes him a while to get up from lying down. And the only way to work through this, apart from all of the homeopathic things that I'm doing and the things that the vet has advised me to do, the vet was just here the other day to check on him, is to keep him walking. He doesn't have to go far because he lost a lot of stamina in these events. He still has some, and he likes to play, and he's goofy, and he's Parker, but he doesn't have the same stamina that he did. And so he will go 0.67 miles. Yes, I've measured it. So he and Dixie and I will go 0.67 miles. We drop Parker off. Dixie and I walk another 3 miles after that. This was his first really early morning walk this morning. Up until now, I have been able to sneak him out, at about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock. and it was fine, but it is just way too hot here for him now. It is over 100 degrees right now at noon here, my time. It was 88 degrees at 8 o'clock this morning here. And when I brought Dixie back in after the rest of our walk, after we dropped Parker off, we took the rest of the walk. And when I brought Dixie back in, it was 6:40 this morning, and it was 84 degrees out there. And I'm not going to take them when it's any warmer than that for sure. So this means that I'm going to have to, do what I did this morning, which is, pop my little eyes open. I'm glad that I woke up at that hour, and I thought, go back to bed, go back to bed. No, I have to get up. If I'm going to get him his walk, I've got to do this right now. And I, bargained with myself. I told myself I could come back and take a nap after I fed them and walked them and did all that. So I took them out, and he enjoyed that walk, I think. It was a nice temperature. It was about 79 degrees, and that was just fine with him. So anyway, he's enjoying. He's doing fine. He's a really beautiful boy, and he's got a great big heart, and he has a great desire to stay here and to be here, and he's got good quality of life. And to me, that's the measure of how we do this. He's got good quality of life, and as long as he does, then I'm going to do whatever I can to make his life as good as it can be. So there you go. Those are sum and substance of the questions for this round of Ask Ames. I'm so glad that you all participated. I know I was a little long-winded, but you asked really, really good, really complicated questions in some cases. I hope I answered everything you wanted me to answer. I know you'll let me know if I didn't. And hey, if you like this sort of thing, we'll do it again, okay? So thanks for the questions. I hope you enjoyed the answers. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in cyberspace, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.